I would like to introduce the next speaker of this track, Christophe Bruchansky. He's an engineer by training with more than 10 years of experience in product management. As a practitioner and later consultant, he has been involved in Agile and DevOps practices of organizations from all sectors, from gaming to e-commerce, healthcare, and banking. He's passionate about philosophy, organizational theories, and leader for organizations. Today, he's going to share some fresh ideas about how to inject more ethics into DevOps. Christophe, over to you. Have fun.
That's right. Thank you, Nina, for this introduction, and thanks to Eficode for organizing this event. It's a great opportunity to speak a bit about ethics. So my claim today, what I would like to talk about today, is that it's really possible to speak about DevOps and ethics. And that it's not only possible, it's the interest of everybody. So whether you're a CEO, a manager, an engineer, or product, or whatever your position is, it's your interest, because by embedding ethics into DevOps, my claim is that you can only reinforce DevOps. And I will go even further and say that if your DevOps practice doesn't include some sort of ethics, then it's probably not DevOps, in my opinion. So I'll explain you that. I will show you some examples, ideas on how to embed ethics into DevOps. So this is very fresh. So it's been a very long time in my head. It's based on my experience, but I had not the opportunity yet to try out these ideas I'm going to show you. So I will be really keen at the end of the session to hear your feedback and to know if any of these ideas you believe can be used in your organization to put a bit more, inject a bit ethics into your practice. But before starting, I would like to ask a quick question. We have a poll for you. So is anything in place in your DevOps teams and CI/CD to make day-to-day ethical decisions? And I define ethics as being the concern of doing something that is right. As we all know, in a public and private life, what works is not always the right thing to do. And sometimes doing the right thing doesn't give us anything in terms of interest. So doing the right thing and doing something that works is different. And ethics is about trying to do something that is right. So three options: either yes, things are in place for your DevOps, in your DevOps and CI/CD to make day-to-day ethical decisions, and you've been involved. Option two is that yes, but you've not been involved. And option three is that you're not aware of anything in place. So Nina, I don't know if we can see live results, but maybe let's give it a few seconds for people to be able to answer.
Oh, Peter says that so far 2/3 replied. 3. So
all right.
He can see the result, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So most of you are not aware of anything in place. And that confirms a smaller survey I've done a few days ago on a smaller group. Well, you know, even if you are not aware of it, I bet you are already making ethical decisions in your day-to-day practice. It's just that you don't realize it. And the first message I have is that if you are in situations in which you don't know or you're not sure what is right to do, it's a good thing. You should not be ashamed about it. It doesn't mean you work on a sort of dubious project. It simply means that you work on something that is important. And I don't know, something that is important for people, for some users. And I don't know any important project that doesn't include some ethical questions. It also means you work on something that is innovative, because you don't have ready-made answers to your questions. So having ethical questions is a great sign, and it's really not something to be ashamed about. And we encounter many ethical questions or dilemma when we work in IT. I give here just 2 examples that are very common. The first one is more in dev. So delighting the customer is one of the motto of DevOps. But what does it mean to delight the customer? Does it mean just to give them what they want in the short term and not think about the long-term consequences? Or is it about sometimes not giving them what they want in the short term, because what we want is a healthy ecosystem and we want users who are happy in the long run? So there are ethical questions in deciding how much we want to give people what they want. And from my experience, in nearly all applications or services, you need to find a trade-off between giving your users what they want immediately, but also caring about the consequences, caring about the ecosystem they are in, and make ethical decisions about what's right to offer and maybe not so right. Another example, more on the ops side, is that I guess if we are all in this conference, we are convinced that delivering things faster and often is a great thing. Ideally, making daily updates. But who are we? What is our deployment plan? Who are the first person who are testing, who are using these new features? And are these people willing to see updates every day? Or are there things for which they would prefer to be warned a bit more in advance? So to answer these questions, what I've seen when working on DevOps projects is that teams often need to make ethical decisions, saying that for a certain group of users, this is right to give them daily updates because they are requesting for changes. So it's beneficial on both sides. But for some other users, you might consider that maybe it's positive in the long term, but maybe these users they would prefer to be warned in advance, or in some sectors such as healthcare, it's maybe not right to impose daily changes on all types of users. It's not a black and white situation. And it's like the question before, and it's really characterized all the ethical dilemmas. It's not something you can decide beforehand, or you define a rule for your CI/CD and then you say, this is the ethical way of working. It is something for which you need to make decisions on a daily basis. Failure to do so might lead to ethical damages and even ethical disasters. So I put on this slide some famous examples of ethical disasters that can have huge consequences for your organization in terms of employee retention, user retention, stock market value, even their position in the market might be compromised by these ethical damages. And my message on this slide is that it's not about saying which organization is evil and which ones will not be evil. The examples here I put on the slides are about organizations having hundreds of thousands, even more engineers in their teams. So there must be people in these organizations who want or who have a desire to do the right thing, who are interested in ethics. The question is, what is lacking in their software development lifecycle so that ethics can be properly discussed within the organization? And we all copy each other, right, in terms of processes. We are all here about DevOps. We try to learn from each other. So I think it's an industry-wide question. It's not only about some organizations. It is, as an industry, what can we do in the way we work so that ethical concerns are embedded into our daily practice? And there is a big analogy to make here between ethics and security. Both seem to oppose short-term benefits and long-term costs. And I think what DevOps has done with great success is to nuance a bit this opposition for security breaches. it is actually possible to create, deliver, deploy secure solutions without compromising the speed. The same hasn't been done in ethics. There is still this notion that if you want to do the right thing, it would slow down everything, and it would mean short-term loss. The other thing in common between security breaches and ethical disasters is that they occur in cultures where, in silo cultures, it's not my problem. And what DevOps has done for that on the security side is to make sure that people feel concerned by security and that they feel it's also their problem. But the same hasn't necessarily happened yet in ethics. So you see where I'm going. I see many similarities between ethics and security. And because I see these similarities, I think that Agile and DevOps can really help on the ethics front as well. So I will do that by showing you two principles of DevOps. And for these two principles, I will show you how they can be very easily tweaked so that you can include ethics. And I will try to show you it's not only benefiting ethics, but it's also even benefiting DevOps as a practice. So let me show you the first principle, which is ownership and autonomy. We know it. DevOps is about a full ownership of the product or service that is delivered, from not only the code, not only the product, not only the security, not only the delivery, everything. And everybody working in a DevOps organization should feel like they are in a situation where they can make autonomous decisions regarding the service or product they're working on. So there are many practices in place in DevOps that can really be useful for ethical ownership as well. Creating small teams, small integrated teams, is a great way for people to feel engaged in the outcome of their apps or services. Experience sharing is a great practice that should not be reduced or limited in its scope. So if you practice already experience sharing sessions, just make sure that people feel they can talk about anything, including ethics. Maybe someone has, or a team has something to share about something they've done that was right, or something they think was wrong in the previous iteration. And they should feel empowered to also share this sort of experiences. A third interesting point as well is the definition of a trusted engineer. And that's where you see that if DevOps is not ethical, it's not really DevOps. We move away from the definition of trusted engineer, where the engineer had a trusted engineer was someone who was making a perfect architecture, a perfect infrastructure, and then was developing it, deploying it all perfectly, without any defect. So that was the definition of trusted engineer that existed beforehand. And of course, you can imagine that not many people were trusted engineer because issues were always happening. And DevOps is really deontological in the sense it tries to redefine what is a trusted engineer. And a trusted engineer is not someone who does things perfectly, but someone who knows that nothing is perfect, nothing is never evolving, and knows how to treat defects, know how to treat issues, knows how to create a feedback loops so that whatever issue happens, whatever change needs to happen, can be fixed quickly. So it's really about making understanding of the stakeholders that's the definition of a good trusted engineer, that then you can move a conversation and create a DevOps culture. So that definition is even maybe more important than anything else for your DevOps culture to really take off.
Hi, we are Eficode and we organize the DevOps Conference. DevOps is not a role, it's a way to increase an organization's ability to deliver applications and services faster with better quality. Some people say that DevOps is a management science. If Agile and DevOps are not yet part of your whole organization, we would love to have a chat and discuss how to make it real for you. You can find us at eficode.com. The links are in the description. And have a great time with the DevOps Conference talks.
And so you need to care as much about definition of done, and it's already a difficult exercise, I know it. Your team also needs to understand what is the definition of right. What can we do so that our stakeholders trust our opinion? And they trust that we do things not only because they work, not only because it will benefit us as a team, but because we have a notion of what is the right thing to do, and we're going to do it. So how can your team create that definition of right? They can, rotations is a practice in DevOps that is amazing in terms of creating empathy and understanding the context of your users, or the context of the users of your internal stakeholders as well. So by organizing these rotations, you will naturally allow people to think about not only works, but what's the right thing to do on the ground, or what's the right product or service to deliver that will not create situations that seem unethical when they are used by a user or an internal stakeholder. Meet with your corporate social responsibility or ethics and compliance ambassadors. So if you are working in a fairly large organization, you probably have people who are already working on ethics. So as for anything else in DevOps, don't be afraid of just having a chat with them, having a coffee or a remote session, and understand a bit what they are up to, and probably it will help you making that definition of right. A last tip I have in terms of defining what is right in your team is to check the value statements that might already exist in your organization, or the code of ethics that might be already articulated. On that front, what I've seen, at least on the internet, is not necessarily always good. So I think right now we still have many organizations who have code of ethics that can be pretty vague for engineers. So for instance, it can be respectful in the code of ethics. But how can you, as a team, in operation or in development, make choices based on just this notion of being respectful? How does it impact your deployment plans? Or how does it impact your user stories? I think it's very hard. So that's why I just put here some examples of code of ethics, which I believe are a bit more actionable, that are a bit more specific. What I encourage you to do is to have this conversation internally with your stakeholders, saying to them that you want to be autonomous, you want to own the ethical aspect as well, but for your team to be autonomous on that side, you need some guidance. And understanding what concretely in your industry, in your organization, what sort of principles you could use to make day-to-day ethical decisions. And I think these examples are great. I'm sure you could find some in your organization. Second principle is automation. And I think for automation, ethics is again an amazing opportunity to avoid some misunderstandings. I've seen many people being reluctant to join a DevOps or Agile organization because they are scared that they won't be able to think beyond the next situation. They are scared of having to work basically like robots, where they will be in a sort of giant machine with iterations, with processes, with automated statistics, and in a machine where you cannot think. And sadly, this is sometimes in some organizations, this is the way DevOps or Agile is implemented. And it's a shame because it should exactly be the opposite. The processes, the automated tools should be there so that you can focus on high-value activities. So really, it's fundamental to understand the whole point is for you to be able to think, not the opposite. So let me give you this example of technical debt. When you have a new user story coming, it's not about doing the one user story, pushing it into the pipeline and going to the next without thinking. That's not DevOps, that's not Agile. It's about when you see a new requirement coming, wondering, is my architecture right for this new requirement? Do I have anything in place in the CI/CD so that I can guarantee the sort of level of service related to that requirement? Do I have an infrastructure that is really fit for that requirement? It is about having monitoring tools so that you can see, you can have indications of the health of your practice, of your velocity, of the number of defects you have. And based on your ability to make a judgment and on these monitoring tools, you should then have the courage, and the term is important, the courage to make some refactoring. And this is why we need humans in all of this. It's because we humans should have the capacity to think about what's going on and to not just repeat things as robots. And this is why I think ethical debt, as I call it, is a perfect match. And it works exactly the same. Ethics is not something you can just plan before you start a project and then you not think about it. It's something that can evolve during a project. It's something for which you don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future. So having this ability to think in the process is essential as well. How to measure? You can simply ask your users not only what works for them, but what is right, what they do. If asking them if the solution you provide is right or not is a good way to start. You can obviously have a self-assessment and a series of surveys internally. And the last tip I would have is in your retrospective, instead of just of asking as usually what works or didn't work in the last iteration, maybe sometimes change it a bit and ask people what was right in the last iteration or what was wrong to do. And I've seen many cases where people don't necessarily have the same answer. So these were the sort of fresh ideas I had. Like for anything else, the point is to not make big reorgs, but instead to try small things. So I come then to the first question I had at the beginning of this presentation. Do you see any first action that you could put in place in your organization to implement a DevOps approach? And if yes, could you put it in the chat, please, so that I can have some feedback about what people think about all these ideas. Thank you.
Hello, Christophe. Thank you so much for your talk. Very inspirational. And I think I learned more about ethics in DevOps. So we have some questions coming in. Zillard, are you with us? Do you want to join us as well for this discussion? So we have one from Sophie Berginon. She's asking, what does right and wrong mean concretely in DevOps? Is it only a security-related issues or questions?
No, not at all. For me, security is an analogy. So I'm not saying at all ethics is related to security. It depends. It depends on the context. So I try to give some examples, but it's whenever you feel that you are doing something that might work, but is not necessarily right. So you might do something that might help financially your organization, but you might think it's actually not beneficial in the long term to your ecosystem. So that's an example of right and wrong. In terms of your of operations, you might offer a certain level of service that might correspond to the contract you have with your users. But in some cases, you might still think that it's not right, that there was a decision you had to make that maybe was correct in terms of following contracts, but you think was not right for the end user. So these are examples of right and wrong.
Maybe I can ask your opinion on that. I wouldn't say the name, but one automotive who was doing a very, I would say, wrong decision of, how to say, optimizing the CO emission. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a great example of a failure by culture. And this is why DevOps, I think, can really help. Because if you have organizations in which nobody is incentivized to talk about these questions, then everybody will shut up, and it will lead to huge disasters. And on that case, so it was the German manufacturer. It appeared that the team who did it, the algorithms initially, they were not sure. They were not even aware that it was illegal or not. So there was a bit of confusion there. And I think if there were some processes that were in place so that this conversation could happen, maybe it could have been prevented early on.
Maybe if you think about, is it legal? It's probably already not so ethical, right?
Yeah, and one of the pity about ethics is that most people know ethics through these legal sort of videos where videos where you need to answer polls at the end, and they can be quite boring and they can be negative in the sense it teaches people not to do some things. And this is, I think, where this perception comes that ethics is necessarily about saying no. Ethics is not about saying no. It's about also finding opportunities to serve your ecosystem in a way that is beneficial for everyone. So it's not a negative thing. It can be a very positive force as well in your organization.
And maybe we can refer to our poll result there, right? So we just got it. So the not aware of anything in place was 63%. Yes, and I've been involved in some discussion was 22%. And yes, but I've not been involved was 15%. Is it in line with your expectation?
Yes, it is in line with my expectation, and this is why I would really love if people on the call have the time. If you have heard any idea today you think could be used so that these statistics can change a bit, I would be really curious, because the point is to move from that and go to a stage where everybody feels involved and feels there is something in place in the organization.
Yes, I do have one final question. Perhaps we can wrap up. I was thinking here, for example, we as individuals, we have personal values. And then there are probably the team values, and there are the organizational values. How to make sure to align those? Do you have any tips for everyone?
Yeah, the tip is trying the code of ethics, I think. And by the way, open source communities also rely on code of ethics. So trying to write them down won't solve everything. So there will always be disagreements between your values, the values of your team and your organization. But I think it works so much better if you know them. And if I think the worst can happen is everybody pretending that everybody is in line in terms of ethical value. Because ultimately, it will only lead to demotivation. It will mean to pretending that things go well. The best thing is that if there are disagreements, you understand these disagreements, and then you can move from there.
Perfect. That was super, super good. Thank you for sharing that. So thank you so much for your talk and for joining us today. And see you next time, maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you.